So I have been talking to people about this for about 3-4 years now. Three years, I'd say. And one of the things that I started to notice when I started to just share this simple fact, and there's a little bit more. That wasn't it, but that's a lot of it. But you share this simple clarity, this simple truth. We experience our thinking. We don't experience the world. The mind is not a camera. The mind is a paintbrush. People started having changes show up in their life that were way out of line with what I said. In fact, they would often say, I'm not really sure what you said, but I feel great. And I got curious about that. I tried to understand that. I had anorexics who stopped being anorexic even though we hadn't gotten around to treating their anorexia. I had all sorts of things like that happen, and I'm not a healer, I'm not a mystic, I know that, right? So I thought, well, what's going on here? I'm a little more pragmatic than that. And one day a guy, we'd only had a couple of chats, and it was a little thing. It wasn't like a dramatic thing. But I remember he said to me, he said, what did you do to me? And I said, what do you mean? Because we'd had a couple of chats. And he said, well, I've been trying to stop biting my nails for 20 years. I haven't bitten my nails once in the last 2 weeks. And I suddenly got it. And I don't know why I got it in that moment. That's the nature of insight. It comes when it comes. Right? The best thing you can do if you want to catch a bus, if you don't know the bus schedule, stand at the bus stop. Best thing to do if you want an insight, you want a new thought, and you don't know where it is, hang out in a quiet mind for a little while. Quiet mind and a beautiful feeling. That's the bus stop for insight. It's the opposite of stress, right? Because stress is a noisy mind and a horrible feeling. So you may as well just at least go there. So for whatever reason in that moment, I got quiet. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, I think I get this. And here's how I explained it to him. I said, imagine that you lived in a world that was filled with evil, poisonous dragons. Nasty, not Disney dragons, like nasty ass, fire-breathing, scratching, poisonous dragons. Now, naturally, living in that world, you would have to build up some pretty intense protection against the dragons. Now, some people would build their castle walls against the dragons out of money. If I can just get enough money, then the dragons won't be able to get me. And so that's why they are the way they are around money. Successful or unsuccessful, they're building that castle wall out of money. Some people try to do it out of success and fame. If I just get famous enough, if I can just be an important enough person, then the dragons won't get me. Right? Some people try to do it with love. If I can just find one person to love me, then the dragons can't get me. Right? And it kind of almost sort of works until they don't love me right. Or they stop loving me, or they start loving someone else. Right? And then suddenly I'm exposed to the dragons again. The money was keeping me perfectly safe. I'm fine. But then suddenly the money wall doesn't look so stable, and now I'm exposed. I'm really famous, it's fine, but then suddenly my fame is waning, my star is waning. I'm being asked to be on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which is like death, right? And I'm like, oh no, my castle walls are crumbling. Well, at some point, either you give up on your castle, or your castle gives up on you. And that's life, right? For most people, at some point it doesn't work out quite the way you'd hoped. And at that point, you get bit and scratched by the dragon. And it hurts. That poison burns in your bloodstream. It feels like tension in your shoulders and a pain in your head, like a throbbing headache, and kind of a shortness of breath and tightness. And it feels a lot like this thing that they call stress. And so the best you can do is take the edge off. So maybe I find that drinking helps with the poison. Right? It's a traditional poison cure. I never actually knew if it was because it worked or you just got drunk, but that's what they did. You try, distracting yourself. You watch a lot of TV. You go shopping. Right? Shopping's a great one. You have a lot of sex with random strangers. However you do it, right? We all have our favorites. But you find some way of dealing with it. Now imagine all of that. And then one day, you wake up, and to your amazement, you realize, categorically, there are no dragons. What happens to your life? It gets different. Because you're not going to really work quite so hard to build those castle walls, because it's hard work. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't. You're not going to work quite so hard to build those castle walls if there's nothing you need to protect yourself from. You're not going to need to keep doing the things that help you deal with the pain of the dragon bites if there are no dragons and no bites. And suddenly, things that you may have done, habits you may have had for years, are gone just like that. And there's a lot of precedents for this. In Vietnam, that was one of the first wars where they had studies where it was an extraordinary number. I don't know the accurate numbers because we're never going to know them, but in some studies as high as 50% of American soldiers in the Vietnam War were hooked on heroin during the war. May point to why things didn't go so well, I don't know. Of that number, less than 10% did heroin when they came back home. Without treatment programs, without anything else. They just weren't, in their minds probably, where the stress germs were anymore. Now, those who had post-traumatic stress disorder still were, but that kind of points to the problem with the whole stress germ theory, is why do you still feel stressed when you're not there anymore? Oh, well, it's because it got inside me now. I'm infected. Well, okay, that would be an explanation, and then you do things to try and root out the infection, like stress management techniques and relaxation techniques and hypnosis and self-hypnosis and meditation, and that would hopefully get some of that poison out, and it kind of works really well. If I wasn't so tired from meditating, I would feel great, you know. But the minute you see that the only thing that can get you, because it's the only thing you can experience, is a thought, it's not so scary.